I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for April 21st, 2021. The meeting is being conducted by a remote participation, and I'll start off by reading a statement on this from the Governor's Office. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission on April 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted by remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. This meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by recording on demand on the Harwich Channel 18 website or on our Town of Harwich YouTube page. So thank you all for attending. Let's start the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is an amendment to an order of conditions for 19 Wacquasit Road, map 5, parcel K1-41. This is a request to amend the order of conditions SE 32-2360A, and it involves a request to change a patio into a sunroom and install a roof over another portion of the patio and install solar panels on the roof. Do we have a representative here tonight for the project?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. Just a bit of housekeeping. I was wondering if it would be okay, since we're the next two items on the list for the two RDAs, that we take the two RDAs first prior to the amended order, if that's okay, and just open up the RDAs and try to dispense with those. Okay,
well, let me go ahead and announce those, and that's fine. So we're going to open now a request for determination of applicability for 19 Wacquasit Road, map 5, parcel K1-41. It's a proposal for a new shed.
Thank you. So I'm coming up to speed on this project. The applications were filed prior to me coming onto the team. I was approached by Mr. Stevens to try to assist with the work that's gone on and the proposals that are before you now. It's my understanding that some of the commissioners met out on the site to review the shed location and its proximity to the coastal bank at 57 feet. It's my understanding that there are two birch trees that are approximately 3 feet from the edge of where the backside of the shed would be proposed. So to relocate the shed to that 60 feet would require the removal of those trees, and the removal of lawn is more advantageous in the current location where the shed is proposed at that 57 feet. So I'd just like to open it up to any questions or concerns with the current location. I know that we like to keep new structures at 60 feet, but in this case, I think the 3 feet is worth accommodating to avoid any vegetation clearing.
All right, thank you. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us on this one?
Sure. I don't have any concern about the shed being 57 feet instead of 60 feet from the edge of wetland. It is in a more open area, and having to push it back a little bit farther would result in the removal of those birches. It doesn't Sorry, I just muted you, Ernie. I was getting a lot of feedback. I think the intent of our regulation for 60-foot no new structures is to prevent further encroachment towards the resource area. But in this location, there already is, there's lawn and everything closer to the resource area that's been there for a very long time. So this does not cause any further encroachment to the resource in my book. Sean, if you elaborate a little bit on the 2-to-1 mitigation that is required for that shed. You're muted.
Thank you. Yes, we can provide the 2-to-1 mitigation that's required, a couple hundred square feet along the perimeter of the previously approved mitigation areas within that 0 to 50 foot buffer along the shoreline there. So we can provide a plan, a planting plan showing the required 2-to-1 mitigation to accommodate that.
I do think that, I mean, it's a fairly small shed, so the requirement will be for that piece of things. I mean, we can, maybe as we talk about other things, that some of the mitigation will have to add up.
Right.
But if it is just that, then that's something I would feel comfortable with reviewing with Sean and just looking at maybe kind of coinciding with the other mitigation plantings that they've had to do on the site in the past. I just wanted to make sure, in the past, there was discussion about some of the mitigation being kind of filling in behind the fiber rolls where there had been a little bit of erosion. And in my mind, that's kind of just routine maintenance of a fiber roll array and would not be mitigation to kind of fill that in and plant that. So provided that they can provide the 2-to-1 mitigation with adequate native plantings, just landward of existing mitigation, I would recommend approval of the shed with a -2 and 3 determination.
All right, thank you, Amy. Let's have comments and questions from the commissioners. I'm going to start with you folks as I see you on the screen. So that means you're first, Ernie.
I have no comments on this item.
Thanks. All right, Stan.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with this item, Brad. It's fine.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I don't have any issues here except that it's requiring mitigation, which nobody seems to have any issue with. But I'd rather see, I don't understand why we're dealing with this separately. It should be part of the whole plan because I can't picture, it's not stated how much mitigation is required. And I suppose we can take care of that, but it seems to me this is part of a larger plan for the place. And I would prefer to see this as part of a plan as opposed to a separate issue, since the mitigation has to be part of a larger plan.
Thanks, John. Okay, Carolyn.
I don't have any comment.
All right. And myself, I agree with Amy's assessment. So I think, John's a good comment, but I think that, we should probably start to resolve what we can here. And we can always bring that mitigation into a bigger picture effort shortly. So I think we should move on this tonight. Any comments from members of the audience? All right, then I'll ask if one of the commissioners wants to make a motion.
Hey, Brad, before we do that, can I just I am a little bit confused about the mitigation issue when we say it could be part of a bigger picture. So don't we have to include this in either the recommendation for the RDA?
We could say that it's going to be incorporated into mitigation for other components of the site. And I'm comfortable doing that. If you folks want, we could wait. But, for this particular shed, I'm comfortable having that worked out. We have a 2-to-1 footprint that we have to mitigate for. And so I think I'm okay if we roll that in to the later projects. How do you feel, Amy, about doing it that way?
Well, the way, if you vote to approve this, the way I would do it is, we would know, I would make note of what that square footage requirement is. And then by seeing how the other applications go for this, we could either, it would either be this or it would be more cumulative. I'm happy to, we can condition an RDA and you can condition, not heavily, but you can condition that 2-to-1 mitigation for the shed is required. It's to be just landward of existing mitigation, to be native plantings, and we can work with that.
How does that sound, Stan?
Yeah, okay, well, I'll try to make the motion. I recommend the approval of the RDA for 19 Picasso Road for the shed with the condition that the 2-to-1 mitigation to be determined at a later date or as part of the overall project. Does that sound okay, Amy?
Yeah, Carolyn had a comment.
-2, -3 determination.
Okay, well, okay, with a -2 and -3 determination.
Yeah, I'll second that, Stan. And under discussion, I'll just say that I think that, it's going to be integrated into other mitigation features for other applications. And I'm comfortable having it go that way. We'll decide what happens with that. Okay, so we have a motion seconded. So I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. And so we've got that one completed. All right, next we have a request for termination of applicability for 19 Wauquasit Road, map 5, parcel K1-41. And this is for a pool fence.
Yes, for the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. So this fence, just to be clear, this is not a pool fence. It's essentially a second layer of security for anybody that would come into the yard. The pool has a pool cover, which by code suffices for the code for the pool, but it prevents people from coming into the yard and coming up the slope into the yard. So it's just a second layer of safety and security for the residents. The fence was not installed with a permit when you discovered it, I guess during the amended order process that'll be before you next. It was identified. I'll just bring up if I can share my screen. Just an image of what that fence looks like. The fence is elevated above the ground, about 6 inches, which is typical for anything within any wildlife corridor. So it isn't inhibiting the movement of wildlife or sequestering the area for wildlife to go through. We have a letter from Oxbow stating to that effect, should it be necessary. But I'll just open it up to any questions you may have about that fence.
All right, thank you. Amy, do you have summary comments for us on this? Oh, you're still muted, Amy.
Sorry about that. So according to our regulations, a fence is considered a structure in the 0 to 50 foot buffer. I do, and that's our no disturb zone. I do know that previously there was some wire fencing just seaward of, and it still is there, of where this fence is. It wasn't, the wire fencing was not contiguous, did not completely encompass the whole yard, and was pretty loose, very large openings in it. So, I do consider this much more of a structure, and it's within a couple of feet of the top of the coastal bank. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
You're correct. It's elevated slightly. I think it elevated slightly from the grade. This would also require mitigation for that square footage. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll back between my notes and my camera here. Usually I print my notes out, but I didn't get to today. So this would be in need of a variance as being a new structure in the 0 to 50, and I do believe it should be filed as a notice of intent and I do think it should be filed under the Wetlands Protection Act as well. It does disturb new land immediately adjacent to a resource area, in my professional opinion. And I am not convinced that it does not have an impact on wildlife habitat. And it is, again, it's not farther back from the resource, it is right up against it. So for this one, I would recommend a positive 1, 3, and 4 determination. The project alters land and buffer zone subject to the act, would require filing an NOI under both the act and the bylaw.
All right, thank you, Amy. All right, well, let's go through comments and questions from commissioners. We'll start with Ernie.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Sean, we've had this application for this fence come to us a couple of times, and every time it comes, it seems to change. Initially, it was a pole fence. Now it's suddenly become a protective fence. In between, it was a dog fence. So, I'm not sure what kind of a fence this is at this point. I agree with Amy's comments. So regardless of whatever kind of a fence it is, it has to comply with the regs. And I think that it does require an NOI. The other thing, I'm not sure if you went out to the site, but there are a number of areas, probably the majority, where I don't think it meets the 6-inch requirements. So, that plus given the fact that it was installed without permits, and I'm pretty judged about this whole application on this particular piece on the property, and disappointed that, we keep getting new information every time it gets presented to us. So that's my comments at this point.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Stan.
I agree with Amy and Ernie, and just the fact that it's within the 50 and our resistance to build any new structures in the 50 is just another factor on top of all the other things that Ernie and Amy said. So I'm not in favor of this at all.
All right, thanks. John.
I agree with all three. I agree with Amy and Ernie and Stan. I don't have anything to add.
All right, Carolyn.
Well, I agree with what everybody has said. I don't think we would have approved this if it came in front of us first. And it's even more egregious that it didn't come in front of us and was put up without permission, which really annoys me. And the excuse that you need it for security reasons from the water side is a little far-fetched. So I agree with everything everybody else has said.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further comments also. So I think we're heading towards a positive determination. Any rebuttal comments from the proponent?
Yeah, I guess we will just, if we can withdraw without prejudice, and we'll file knowing that we've got the enforcement out there, we'll file a notice of intent and variance request immediately. And I'll work with Amy on the side for any modifications or any input for that notice.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just to say that works on regulatory end, but I would suggest that it to be filed within 30 days.
Great.
Okay. No other activities necessary for withdrawal?
You do need to vote to let them withdraw without prejudice.
Okay. Carolyn?
In the meantime, the fence is allowed to stay exactly the way it is. And they'll give a notice of intent, file a notice of intent, and then ask for a continuance and a continuance, and it just stays there?
We can't really assume what's going to happen.
Amy, given that this was installed without permits, are we within our grounds to impose fines on this?
Yes.
300 a day?
It wouldn't be daily right now because they filed application for to have it allowed. So when they filed application for it, it kind of puts the stopper on timing. If you wanted to issue a one-time, that would be fine in terms of the regulatory aspect of things. And then in terms of it staying up, so I'll just explain with their type of application they filed, the request for determination of applicability. There's really not a way for the commission to outright deny a project with a request for determination of applicability. It's either approved or it's a notice of intent is required. That an RDA is not sufficient. So unlike a notice of intent where you can approve or deny, with an RDA, you're really only given the options of approval or, well, we need more information, you need to file an NOI.
All right, well, if somebody would like to make a motion to accept the withdrawal and suggest a fine, I think a one-time fine is appropriate for this situation. If someone wants to make that motion, please.
I'll make a motion to accept the request to withdraw without prejudice and to levy the maximum allowable fine for the violation.
Could I have a second, please?
I'll second it. But
All right, second by Stan.
do we stipulate the $300 though?
I would suggest you stipulate the exact amount.
All right, I'll modify the
Thank you.
motion to make the fine $300.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any last comments under discussion? All right, we'll vote by roll call. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. All right, thank you for that. So we're back to the amendment order of conditions. If you want to describe that component, please.
Yes. Under the amended order of conditions, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. So really the only piece that's left under the amendment, let me just bring up so under just a little back history, under the 2015 NOI order of conditions, the patio, the walls that were installed. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
The walls that were installed, the pool, were all part of that NOI, along with the mitigation plantings. The order was closed out with a certificate of compliance. This amended order was filed for the shed and for, in 2018, the application was filed for the enclosure, the covered patio area with this structure to be installed on the top of those walls with a roof structure, with a gutter, downspouts, and the drainage to be routed to the existing drywall system that was part of the 2015 application that accommodated the patio area. So no new installation of drainage is required, because essentially instead of draining out the patio area, the roofed area is now to be routed to the dry well. That was approved under the 2018 notice of intent, which is an open order. The order was issued in 19, so it's valid until 22 to finish this roofed structure. In the meantime, the applicant came forward with Arlene Wilson as a representative to propose a four-season room, and that's what's before you now, is the four-season room to enclose that space of the patio. that's entirely underneath the approved roof structure. We've dispensed with the shed. That was also part of the application for the amendment. So really it's just this portion of the project that is still in front of you for the amendment, is to enclose this and make this a four-season room. So we don't feel that the enclosure of this space to provide more shelter and is going to have any impact on any of the resource areas. The area is already roofed. It's already got a full patio. The structure is already supported on the walls of the patio, as well as the patio itself. There's no disturbance required to the ground area around the patio. So we don't see that this would have any negative impact to any of the adjacent resource areas. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Amy, do you have summary comments for this component?
First, a question. Sean, this also includes putting a roof over a different section of patio as well as solar panels, correct?
That has been, okay, that will be withdrawn from this application.
Oh, okay. I was going to mention, because you weren't on the case prior, so at the first meeting that we had when Arlene Wilson was representing, we did state that the solar panels could be filed for administratively with our department, as long as the condition is no trees are to be removed in order to get better light. So that I haven't looked at our stack of admin reviews that came in while I've been away, but that is still on the table for the applicant to do administratively if they so choose. And that's just a form that goes to me and my assistant agent, and the commission doesn't have to vote on it. Okay, so for the request in front of us for the four-season room, when I went out to my site visit prior to the initial hearing.
Hi.
Hi, could you please mute yourself? I'm going to mute you. When it is time for public comment, the chairman will call for public comment, and you would just have to hit *6 to be heard. So, but it's not time quite yet for that. So for the proposal in front of you for the sunroom, so the commission approved a roof supported by columns, and with the condition that it is not to become, living space. With that order back at that time, the commission approved the site plan, but they did not approve the architectural plans in the order of conditions, which show what Mr. O'Reilly is showing you here. Those plans, just for the commission's edification, those plans did get approved by the building department, and I know that there's been a little confusion there between what got approved by conservation and what got approved by building. But in the order of conditions, it specifically cites the site plan and not architecturals. When I went out to the site originally prior to the filing in, I think it was February or early March, we noticed that some work had started. So I did bring out Building Inspector Dave Anderson to give me a feel about, was this all work as part of just a roof structure, like such as we permitted, or was this on its way to, were they prepping for it to become a finished space? And he has told me that it did appear that it was on its way to becoming, or being prepped to become finished space. So this was a bylaw filing only, and our bylaw, our regulations, we have a 50-foot no disturb zone in our bylaw. We also have a 60-foot no new structure regulation that went into place last year, which states that no building or addition shall be within 60 feet of a wetland resource area. And so because of that, this new structure is within 60, and it is an addition. And I unfortunately cannot recommend approval of closing in this patio.
All right, thank you, Amy. All right, so we'll take comments and questions from the commissioners, and I'll start with Ernie.
Yeah, I've really struggled over this. I spent the last couple of weeks just thinking about this. I mean, on the one hand, I agree that when we originally approved this, we approved it as hardscape, and I went back and listened to the minutes from the prior meeting, well, the meeting that when this was approved. And there was a lot of discussion around whether is this hardscape, is this a structure? And as a patio, I think it was definitely hardscape, allowing a roof to be put on it. I think the feeling of the commissioners at that point in time was that it didn't necessarily convert it into a structure. It retained its definition of being hardscape, albeit with a roof over it. I think that Mr. Stevens has, as I said at the last meeting when we discussed this, has sort of taken advantage of some of the approvals that he's gotten from the building department. And although we specifically stated that this was not to be enclosed, his intent all along has been to enclose this. So I'm really struggling with that. On the flip side, he did make a argument that the impact to the environment, to the resource area here, really doesn't change. We have approved to put a roof over this. Putting windows around that roof doesn't change the impact that much. And I tend to agree with that. The roof appears to be constructed so that you can put a deck on the top of it. He's assured us that that was ornamental only, that he would not put a habitable deck on the top of this roof that's being installed. And then the other thing that I've looked at on this site is I think he's voluntarily gone ahead with installing a nitrogen mitigation system on his septic system, which I really applaud him for. I think he did that without any sort of prodding from us, certainly, and I think from his own concern for the environment there, I would hope. As well as the Caltech system that's in there. It spreads the runoff from the roofs better than a standard dry well will, as far as my understanding. So he's done some good things as far as trying to preserve the environment in this particular lot. So what I'm struggling with is the balance. You know, there isn't a lot of environmental impact from enclosing this structure that we previously approved. And in the same vein, he's taken other steps on this lot that I think are to the positive as far as environmental impact as well. So at this point, I'm right in the middle of the fence on this one. I think I'm probably tending to lean over the side toward allowing the enclosure of this. But those are my thoughts at this point in time.
Thanks, Ernie. All right, Stan.
Amy, I'm glad you clarified that, because when I saw this drawing that was put up here, I'm saying, oh, that looks like what he's built. And I said to myself, I never saw that drawing as far. I mean, it wasn't from 2015. I wasn't on the board then. So if that was presented back then, I wouldn't have seen it. And when we approved the roof with the posts, and again, like Ernie, I went back to that meeting back when we approved that revised order of conditions, and the representative at that time specifically said a roof with posts, period. Not walls, which this drawing shows, but literally just a simple roof with posts. That's all it was described. There's no pictures or anything at that point. So I think this is well beyond what we were approving with that roof. And again, I would go with your other comments, Amy, that this is a structure within the 50 now.
Thanks, Dan. John?
Yeah, so first, I need to get some resolution to a comment that Mark Coleman made at a previous meeting where he was saying that the size of the patio or that the structure is being built on is larger than what is shown in the plans. And I wasn't around to when a group before the last meeting or went over there and visited and checked things out. So I never heard how that got resolved. And I'd like answers to that. Because, you know, whether or not that's the case certainly has some bearing here. And aside from that, I'm somewhat sympathetic to what Ernie is saying. I understand his point. On the other hand, from a purely regulatory point of view, it's actually shouldn't be an approvable structure. And furthermore, I don't think it sets any kind of a good example to approve something where we've gotten there through being gamed in the way that we've been gamed here. And while where Mr. Stevens is reassuring us that there is not going to be a roof deck, I don't know why we should take that at face value. I mean, there's a lot of other things they assured us about, which clearly haven't panned out that way. So I'm not inclined to go along with this at all.
All right, thank you, John. Carolyn?
Well, even though I voted for the revised plan, I had a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that a raised roof over a patio was not a structure. Well, when you add walls to the raised roof and the roof and patio, in my mind, it's definitely a structure, and I can't go along with this at all.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. And if I can follow up, I would say I also struggled with the approval of this, and I went back and listened to the December 18, 2018 hearing, and you know, we were concerned about having a new structure in the 0 to 50 that could possibly create living space and then result in more human activity in the open areas of the 0 to 50. So that's the impact I think that our regulations try to avoid. And so, you know, I agree with what Ernie said, except for that, you know, you have that potential for greater activity, greater impact to the resource area, and more activity in the 0 to 50 no disturb zone. So I don't support it either. And very clear from that hearing transcripts that this was presented to us as really hardscape with a roof over it. So with that,
Brad, one clarification. My understanding was wrong. I thought Mr. Stevens had voluntarily agreed to put that nitrogen attenuation system in, but my understanding is that the Board of Health has required him to do that.
okay.
So that sort of colors my opinion a little bit on this issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think you're hearing that there's not a lot of support for this amendment. And so I don't know if you want to, if you have anything you want to say in response, or what your proposed course of action is.
Sure, through the chair. I wasn't involved in the original project, the 2015 landscape project, or the 2018 roofed, roof over the patio project. I just had to go back through the notice of intent, try to go through the facts of the case, and just looking at the narrative that went along. This is the 2018 notice of intent for the project, which was limited to the installation of a roof over an 18 by 30 portion of the south end of the existing patio. The roof support system, a series of posts and piles will be set on and in the existing patio sitting wall. Roof drainage, as I said, would be collected and run into the existing Cultec drainage system. So just looking at the approved building plan, to me, this looks exactly like what was proposed within that notice of intent. You've got a roof system. It's actually smaller than 18 by 30. It's about 16 by 28, set on a series of posts that come down onto the seat wall. So this does appear to be the what was approved. As far as a roof deck, that's speculation of what, you know, the next activity may happen out at the site. That could be handled with a requirement for a certificate of compliance be requested as soon as the work is completed prior to occupancy of that area, to show that there's no roof deck activity or potential for roof deck activity when that's completed. As far as the size of the patio, we haven't taken measurements of the size of the patio, but just looking at, you know, the shape and size of the proposed landscape plan and the configuration with the curved wall, the swimming pool, the other end of the curved wall with the actual on the ground, it looks identical to what was proposed in the original landscape plan. So I don't think that they've exceeded what was involved in that. Original patio also received a certificate of compliance for that footprint of the patio to further show that it met compliance. As far as that roof structure, I would say that is a structure within the 0 to 50 that was allowed. And to Ernie's point, it's, you know, to enclose that either with glass screen or walls is not going to have any impact on the resource area, nor is it going to increase the activity. The space is already being used, human use in and out of that space. If anything, it'll sequester that people to go inside and get out of the outside spaces. So as far as you allowing the enclosure, I don't think it's going to set any precedent because the structure is already there. There's already a roof that's going in under the approved order of conditions. So I don't see that this would have any negative impact or require any variance because that structure is already there. It's simply just infilling the sidewalls of what's already there. So that's my response to, I don't know if it changes anybody's minds, but as far as the Board of Health, for them to close that in, the Board of Health would require the addition of an IA component, which obviously would reduce the nitrogen and would provide a positive benefit to the resource area with a reduction of nitrogen intrusion into the water body and in the estuary. So I would see that as a positive mitigation for essentially just closing in this roof space that is going to exist over top of this patio. Through the chair, thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, go ahead, John, please.
Brad, this is Stan. Can I just ask one question to Sean?
Sure. Yeah.
You stated, as you were talking just now, that drawing and design was part of the notice of intent from back in 2015. If that were true, then why were we being asked in 2018 to approve an updated order of conditions to allow a roof? It could have been part of them, and that's what Amy said, if I remember originally, that was never presented as part of the notice of intent, if I understood everything right.
You are correct. It was not part of the 2015 notice of intent. It was part of the 2018 notice of intent, where they came forward with that proposal to put a roof over the patio system that had gone through and through completion and received its certificate of compliance. This was the next step within a new notice of intent. So
well, I was there in 2018 and I don't remember seeing any of this.
Amy?
Well, I mean, I can't speak. not looking at the, meeting packet of 2018, but I mean, this has been provided to you within the past few months to remind people of that. So what was provided in 2018 was the architecturals as well as the site plan, and the commission voted for a roof structure with columns not to become finished or habitable space. So we specifically did not include the architectural drawings in the decision, which showed more of a finished look to it.
John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, more a question than a comment. Sean has been showing various things here, one of which is a plan, which I don't recall seeing that plan in any of the packets, but there's a lot of stuff. It is your desktop, is that right, Sean, that's showing here?
This is my desktop. And if
you show a plan, and it looks like a landscaping plan or something, and you also showed an aerial photograph. Can you, so one of the curious things about this plan, and somebody needs the mute, thank you. One of the curious things about this plan and the aerial photograph, what's the vintage of this plan and the aerial photograph? Where is this plan from?
So this plan is from 2015. This landscape plan is the plan that was approved under the 2015 NOI and order of conditions that was issued. And the aerial photograph was taken more recently after the activity was completed. I can get the date. If it would make sense to ask for a continuance for a review of the documentation, we'd be glad to do that. But
I'm not trying to nail down any dates here. I'm just trying to understand the plan, because there's a detail here that strikes me that may have been part of what happened 2018 or not, but the southeast corner of the hardscape there is a rounded thing.
Yes.
And in the plan you showed, but that's not the way it is now. Certainly my recollection of being on site and seeing that that was not the case, and the current plans don't show that. I'm just wondering when that change happened. Was that part of any approval we did in 2018, actually changing the hardscape here? Because clearly there was some hardscape construction that occurred here. Was that part of any submission?
I'm aware that the hardscape has changed any from the image that you're seeing or the...
Well, look at the current plan. That's a square corner in the current plan. In order to support the southeast post, that had to be changed to support the southeast coast. Post. It's a detail, but I'm just wondering what happened here and when that happened. That plan shows it rounded, but the other plan that we've been looking at does not, which it makes sense because he's putting a rectangular roof over a rectangular hardscape, but clearly the hardscape has been modified.
All right, I would have to check into that too.
It implies that there was other construction done within the 50, and I'm wondering whether there were any approvals for any construction within the 50 on that site.
There were not any approvals, and I'm unaware that any modifications were made. I could look into it.
It's just obvious that it would have had to have been modified in order to get to where it is today.
Thank you, John. Carolyn?
I believe the hardscape has been modified. Sean, if you recall looking at it, the sitting wall now goes all the way to the main building.
Back here?
Yep.
Okay, I was unaware of that as well.
You were unaware of it?
Yes, I'm just being brought up to speed on this, and I apologize for being unaware of
Have you been to the site?
I have not been to the site.
Well, that's definitely a change. The wall now goes all the way to the building and blocks off any access, I believe, I could be wrong on this one, blocks off access from that room to the rest of the patio, because the owner's wife did not want the kids to be walking into this area in their wetsuits, is what he told me. Sorry, I'm
just pulling up the plan.
Carolyn, if I recall, we discussed that at one of our visits there too. And if I remember, that extension, it looked like, if I remember, like cinder block on the inside, or.
It's a veneered block wall. And he just extended it over there. That's changing the hardscape on top of the hardscape, but over there, the southeast corner, they had to, be doing stuff to actually extend the corner.
I guess back to the structure question, and whether or not the structure was approved, the roof structure with posts down, whether or not the any infilling would require a variance, or if any of the infilling would cause any negative impact to any of the resource areas would be a question.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, please, Amy.
I would just state, in my opinion, it would, because we do have that 60-foot no new structure regulation, which does say no new building or addition. And what was there previously was not an addition. And what you're asking for now is an addition. So in my opinion, it would require a variance.
If I can just interject to John's original question about the size of this structure, the last time we went out to visit this as a group, we brought a tape measure. The width of the existing porch is now 29 feet 9 inches, and the depth toward the water is 18 feet 6 inches. The plans that we have submitted to us show the depth of only 16 feet 2 1/4 inches, so it's gone out an extra 2 feet or so, and the width of it was 27 feet or so, and it's now 29.9, close to 30 feet. So somehow the dimensions of this have grown over time since we last approved it.
Amy, can you come? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Clarifying, Ernie.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Amy if she had any update on this. I know there was a work stop order. Is that still in place for this particular structure?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead, please.
You talking to you, Sean?
Oh, I thought Sean had something to say.
No, I didn't have any additional comments.
Okay. Do you want to continue to sort some things out from your end, or would you like us to rule on this tonight?
I'm seeing if I can I think the project attorney is on the call. Glenn, are you on the call?
If he's on via phone, he has to hit *6 to unmute himself.
It looks like he's on. GW. When is the next meeting that we could get on?
May 5th.
Yeah, I think I just saw Mr. Wood left.
just asking the client if you'd like to continue.
Okay.
Would you like us to move on to a next hearing? Would you like to come back in a few minutes?
Please, thank you.
Oh, good.
Is
Okay.
that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, we'll come back as soon as you, yep, we've got some continuances to announce, so yeah, we can do that business and you can let us know when you're ready to come back in.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. So next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 0 Old Campground Road, map 30 parcels C6, C7, C8, and C9. It's a proposal for a new dwelling. I've got a note they've requested a continuance until May 19th, 2021. Is that correct, Amy?
Correct.
Okay, so I move that we grant that continuance. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, seconded by John. So all those in favor say aye. Starting with
Aye.
Stan,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
and myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. So we'll continue there. Next, we have 34 Red Pine Drive, map 82, parcel X18. It's a proposal for a single-family dwelling. Do we have a representative here tonight?
Yes, good evening, AJM Site Design, representing Martin Letty. When we left off on this project 2 weeks ago, the commission had a couple comments and requests. The first was the proposed septic system, which was originally a standard Title V system. You requested to upgrade that to an IA system, which we have done. We've included a microfast 0.5 is now proposed. One of the other items was to evaluate bringing in the limit of work, which we've also done. We brought the limit of work in about 4.5 feet across the width of the property, which reduces the disturbance within the 100-foot by about 450 square feet, or 18% reduction in what it originally was. One of the other comments was to bring the building outside of the 100-foot. We were able to reorient. There was originally an area of the building that jutted out, which was the dining room. It protruded out towards the pond. We've been able to rotate that 90 degrees to the east to get the building outside of the 100-foot. We would like to maintain the deck along the back of the property. The applicant feels that that is kind of an important part of his project and his house. So we would like to maintain that. So we feel, we're taking the foundation out of the 100-foot, and we now have an impervious deck within the 100-foot, but it's still 90 feet from the edge of the wetland, and over 100 feet from the edge of the pond. The one last comment that we heard was the roof runoff dry wells. We originally had two. They were right on the edge of the 100-foot and just inside of the 100-foot buffer. After we rotated or reoriented the house, one of them did not fit, so we've enlarged one. Let's see, it would be the westerly dry well. We've enlarged, and we will redirect all of the roof runoff to that unit, which is outside of the 100-foot buffer. All the original proposed mitigation remains the same. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for making those changes. I'll ask Amy if she has any summary comments.
Sure. First, Sean Riley, if you're still on, if you could stop sharing your screen, that would be really helpful. For some reason, I can't, even though I'm organizer, I cannot do that. So if anybody in Sean's party is also listening, please ask him to stop sharing his screen for the time being. Okay, so while that's hopefully happening, 34 Red Pine. So the project has been changed in my mind fairly substantially. House has been pulled back and is now 90 feet from the BVW and 123.7 from the pond. The limit of work is 76.4 from the BVW. I would recommend approval of the project, as I do think that they've done a good job minimizing the disturbance in the 100-foot buffer. They are planning on planting some thinner spots in the woods with applicable native species, which would add some diversity and improve habitat. I would recommend that the area beyond the limit of work become a no-mow zone and be delineated by a living fence, a split rail fence, or intermittent boulders, or some sort of combination. And that would be determined by myself with the applicant or the representative. And I also would recommend approval if they would consider, well, we already would condition that no fertilizers or chemicals are to be used on the property within the 100-foot buffer. But as it is in the Six Ponds Conservation District, and I know that's a planning district and not a Conservation Commission district, the Six Ponds Conservation District is specifically put in place to protect water quality. So as mitigation, because they're not able to mitigate fully for their disturbance in the 100-foot buffer, I would recommend approval if they would agree to a no chemicals, fertilizers, even organic condition for the lot. And with that, I will turn it over.
All right, thank you, Amy. I'll go through questions and comments from the commissioners, starting with Ernie.
Question for you on the new proposed dwelling. I see the footprint has increased by 31 square feet, albeit it appears it's all out on the 100. But does that footprint include the proposed deck?
No, that would just be the limit of the foundation. That does not include the deck. And actually, the reason it increases is because when we turned out that dining room that originally protruded north, some of the roof lines didn't work. So we actually had to bump out and square up the right side of the building and kind of square it off with the garage.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. All right. So the proposed deck covers how much space?
The proposed deck is 40 by 10, so it's 400 square feet total.
So is that the extra 400 square feet included in the mitigation?
The mitigation is a little tough on this one. I don't know that we can like count foot per foot on the mitigation because we're sparsely mitigating throughout within the 50 foot. But the total area of disturbance that we were looking at was everything inside of the 100-foot buffer. So it was that total originally was 2495. It has now gone down to 2037.
Okay. So the answer is it doesn't really, right?
I'm sorry, say it again?
So the answer is it doesn't include the mitigation for the deck, the 400 square feet for the deck?
Yeah, well, that was in the original proposal, basically, because we were looking at all the disturbance inside the 100-foot buffer, which originally took care of the deck and the building itself. So originally, yes, it does. Yeah, I would say it does.
It does, because the deck now encompasses the area that was previously building.
It does, correct.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Stan?
I have no questions for Brad.
All right, John?
Yeah, just one question. I think you said the deck was impervious. Did you really mean impervious or did you mean pervious?
I meant pervious. I may have said impervious, but I meant pervious.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
All right, John?
I just spoke.
Oh, sorry about that, John. Carolyn?
I have no comments.
All right. And myself, I appreciate the adjustments made in response to our comments from the last hearing. So I'll ask if there are any comments from members of the public at this point.
Just because we did have a few people ask to get into the meeting, I just wanted to state again, if you want to speak and you're on a cell phone, you have to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm right in front of that at 30 Red Pine. A question. Amy, did you say that that you don't have anything to do? I don't understand all the things about what we're talking about, but you're saying that you don't have anything got to do with the 6 ponds. Am I correct?
Correct. That's the planning board. That's their regulation. So we only, the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland itself. And then another board has jurisdiction over, more of the entirety of the lot. So it seems counterintuitive because it's the 6 Ponds Conservation District, but it's not our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's confusing to me. The storage system that was requested, can someone explain to me the noise that comes off that? Is that a silent system, or are we going to hear a continuous hum coming from it? And I believe we're going to hear a hum.
You will not hear any hum from that. There is a very small blower that is located near the bulkhead on the side of the house. I can give you a distance from the property line. It's approximately 75 feet from the property line, and they are very quiet. You can walk almost up to them, right next to them, and you cannot hear them. So you will not hear anything from.
Well, I don't know about that one now because, again, I'm not up on it, but my engineer is up on it. And if you Google that, all as you see is complaints coming from a hum that people say it drives them crazy, that they can hear that. And once you hear it once, you will hear it all the time.
Yeah, I know, from my personal experience, they're very quiet. And if we could locate it on the other side, on the other corner, if need be.
Well, yeah. I'd like the house located some other place. I'd love to know if this house is to be lived in by Mr. Leddy, or is this house for sale?
I can't speak for Mr. Leddy, but I believe that this is going to be his residence.
So on your paperwork, what size is the square footage of the house that you submitted?
The total footprint of
the square footage of the house.
I don't know the exact square footage of the house.
You wrote it down. You wrote it down on your paperwork at 2,200 and something square feet, and the actual house right now is 2,700 and something square feet.
I know the footprint of the house. The footprint of the concrete foundation is 2,300 square feet, just a little over 2,300 square feet.
Yeah, 2,300 square feet, and the house they're saying now is 2,700 and something.
That's including the garage. No, it only.
Yeah, there's a foundation under the garage too, and there's a what will we call it? A bonus room on top of the garage. So that's all in one, right? So someone isn't telling the truth here. The size of the house that's being looked for.
Mr. Gallagher, your questions so far have not pertained to conservation issues. So
I think it might do because of the storage. What size is what's the storage system that's there? What's it capable of? How many bedrooms is it covering?
This is a
cover? Yes, but what size is this? If I put that same storage system in my house, how many bedrooms could I have maximum on that storage system?
3 bedrooms.
Well, so again, these are questions pertaining to other town boards. So I would ask Mr. Gallagher to focus.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'd just like to make one point for Mr. Gallagher, which is that the IA system is on the opposite side of the house from your property.
I know you're going to say that this is this is down to the building department, but I know you've gone out and looked at, if you went out and looked where my house is and where this house is going, guys, none of you would be approving this. I can guarantee you that. So, but anyway, I guess that's for someone else to, for me to fight with someone else over that. But if you went out and looked at where this house is going, none of you guys would approve this if it was in your backyard. And I'm shocked that it's been approved because how close the pond is to it, you know.
Mr. Gallagher, we are required to stay within the bounds of our regulations that we have, and we can only require what we are allowed to require under the law. So that's what we're trying to do to the best of our ability.
I appreciate that.
I understand your concerns, Mr. Gallagher. I think you have questions for, other boards, building as well as public health. So thank you for participating. Any additional questions on conservation?
Not from me, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from members of the audience? All right, hearing none, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
Brad, I, based on comments that have been made so far and the changes in the plans that have been submitted to us and Amy's comments, I would make a motion that we approve the notice of intent for 34 Red Pine Drive, map 82, parcel X18.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So under discussion, I just want to be sure we're clear on the conditions. We're looking for no chemical applications, typical condition for all of the conservation jurisdiction, as well as the mitigation plantings. Is that correct, Amy, or was there another feature to that?
I would suggest that because it's a vacant lot and they can't mitigate for the disturbance that they are proposing to do as mitigation, you put the condition that they agree to and the condition that there's going to be no chemicals, including organic, on the entire lot.
That would require an agreement because some of that is outside of our jurisdiction. So could we ask if the applicant would be supportive of that?
Yes, we would be in agreement with it.
Okay, all right, so that would be a condition.
We would have to have an agreement. Yes.
Okay, and you're fine with the mitigation plantings as proposed, Amy?
Yeah, because I generally I like to just see the natural areas stay natural. And for the most part, I mean, they're just adding a couple here and there. And I think it does show that they did go out and look to the site and they're just not trying to pack the understory in just for the sake of doing it. They look and see where they could be beneficial. So there's only a few mitigation plantings because that's all the site really needs. The buffer, it's natural on its own.
Okay. And how about the numbers relative to the square footage of disturbance in the 50 to 100? I know we're not quite there, it's 2 to 1, but we're comfortable that we have the numbers plus the no chemical applications.
That's my recommendation to you, that some of the mitigation can't be quantitated, such as the chemical application condition. And I think they've minimized to the extent that they can for the disturbance in the 100.
Okay, so let the public record show that we had this discussion on conditions, and I'll ask for a vote by roll call. Those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay. Starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much for your presentation, and good luck.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, so let's go back to 19 Wachusett. I think Coastal's ready to discuss it further.
Yes, through the chair, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering. Could we request a continuance to, I guess, the last meeting in May, to give me some time to get caught up and to speak with Amy and to get out and actually take a look at the site and the conditions that are out there. And also we have to put together that application for the fence over the next couple of weeks here to get that in. So I'm not sure what your last meeting is in May.
May 19th.
May 19th? If we could request a continuance to the 19th?
Okay.
We would just need information a week prior, Sean, please.
Actually, you know what, is the next one the second? The
June?
2nd of June?
Hang on one second. Let me look
Yeah.
at my calendar. I believe it, yes, it is.
Okay. If we could request a continuance to June 2nd.
Okay. All right, I move that we grant a continuance for the request to have an amended order of conditions for 19 Wacquasit Road, map 5, parcel K1-41 until June 2nd, 2021. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Dan? You're muted. I think you said aye there, Stan.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Did you say amended order of conditions that I hear?
Yes, that's what we're,
I thought it
that's
was,
what we, no.
okay.
Yeah, they were seeking to amend an order of condition.
Okay.
Okay, John,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
and myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 5-0. So we'll see you on June 2nd.
Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, next, we have a notice of intent for 64 Snow-In Realty Trust, 0 Snow-In Road, map 15, parcel N8-B-0-R. It's a proposal for a new pier, ramp, float, and dredging. And they have asked for continuance. Amy, is it May 19th or May 5th?
Yes.
Okay, so they've asked for continuance to May 5th, 2021. And I move that we grant that continuance. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have a notice of intent for 30 Harbor Road, map 15, parcel 15-A. It's a proposal for new dock and pier, and they have also asked for continuance, I think, until May 5th, Amy, or is it the 19th?
May 19th.
Okay, so they want to come back on the May 19th. I move that we grant that continuance. Could I have a second?
Second it.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. All right, next we have an notice of intent for 41 Sequotum Road, map 101, parcel S5-2. It's to reconstruct an elevated timber stairway, repair a patio and wall, repair a boathouse and shed, install a kayak rack, and replace an existing seasonal dock with a new seasonal dock. Do we have a representative here tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, John O'Reilly, representing the 41 Sequotum Road. We were here probably a month ago now at our second hearing. We had made some revisions to the proposal. I think the commission was in favor of the proposal last time we met, but we were missing input from the Waterways Committee. I met with them earlier tonight, and they unanimously approved the proposal as it's presented in the plan. I think that was the last bit of information that you folks needed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any summary comments on this one? We have heard it the last hearing or two.
Yep, just to quickly remind the commission, it is to redo the staircase, which is now going to be in the same location as the existing staircase and set in the ground, because the commission determined that it would be less invasive to do it that way rather than to construct a new one where vegetation would be altered, and to repair the wall, patio, and house, all in the same footprint. And then there's the dock. So we heard everything else. There was no comments on the rest. And we were just waiting for waterways. And seeing as how this is a freshwater dock and they tend to be a little bit easier to get through sometimes in saltwater, I said I thought it would be okay that if Mr. O'Reilly received an approval from them tonight, that he could come to us tonight as well. Normally we request something in writing, but I can touch base with the harbor master in the morning as well. So I would recommend, hold on one second. I would recommend approval of the project with seasonal storage of the dock and the boat lift. They're to be on the patio or off-site outside the 100-foot buffer zone, and that the kayak racks to not have a rack on the ground, but that kayaks could be suspended off the railing for the stairs, the back of the boathouse, on a rack on the patio, not on the ground itself. Or some docks do even have just a hanger that they can hang the kayaks from. So with those conditions, I would recommend approval of the project.
Thank you, Amy. And we did discuss the idea of having it approved at Waterways tonight before us, and so I think we're all ready for that outcome. So I'm fine with that as well. Any comments from commissioners, starting with Ernie?
Yeah, the only comment I have is with respect to the kayak rack, Amy. We generally don't allow them to be off the side of the dock because that increases the footprint of the dock, and we've always maintained that it cannot exceed 4 feet. So your recommendation to have them either on the stair rail or the back of the boathouse or some existing structure, I think would be fine with me, but that's where I would prefer to see it. That's all.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Stan?
No comment. Well, I guess, do we have a preference of storing the dock and that boat lift on the patio versus out of the 100?
Maybe John can comment on whether it would all fit on the patio. It's not a huge patio.
Yes, actually, that was a discussion point for Waterways. We believe that the current dock was stored on the patio. Current dock is much more bulky than the proposed seasonal dock we're proposing here. So I don't think it's going to be an issue of storing the dock. I think it probably will be an issue to store or properly store the boat lift. And we've discussed that with the owner. If he can fit it on the patio, he will fit it on the patio. If he cannot, he will pull it off site so it's not on the beach as it is now.
Okay, that was my concern, not so much the dock, but that boat lift. That's the big structure there. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. John?
No comments.
Thanks. Carolyn?
Our little notice on the agenda describing the work being done does not mention the boat lift.
That's because when it was, we just advertised based on what's in the notice. I don't even, maybe it wasn't known at the time that there was a lift. I think it's a small enough, as long as we store it right, I don't think it's an issue as far as advertising or incorrect, if you will.
And then my question was, what is the material of the decking and the float?
This is not going to be a float. It's a standalone freestanding dock. The decking will either be, wooden with the spacers in it, and I believe your standard condition is 3/8 of an inch. or a synthetic product that equals that type of light ratio.
Would you consider the new grading products that are out there?
The flow-through decking is something that would be available. I think that I'm not completely sold on them yet, but they are available, and I would like to have the owner have some option. And the standard 3/8 of an inch gap in decking would certainly provide him flexibility to pick a product that he's comfortable with.
I'd like them to consider that stuff, the new products. Thank you.
I'll pass that along.
All right, I have no comments myself. Are there any comments from members of the audience? All right, hearing none, would one of the commissioners like to make a motion here?
I'll move to approve the notice of intent for 41 Sequotum Road, map 101, parcel S5-2, with the conditions as outlined by Amy.
Okay, could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right, second by Stan. All those in favor say aye. Aye, roll call. Those opposed say nay, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. All right, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 28 Wawatasi Road, map 6, parcel F1-12. It's a proposed elevator walkway and landing. They have asked for a continuance. What date are they hoping to come back to, Amy?
The 19th, please.
Okay, so May 19th. I like the way we're spreading these out a little bit between the two May dates. That's
I can't
good.
believe that we've continued one to June. That feels so far away, but it's not.
Yeah, I don't mind it. It just good to not have them all on one date.
Yep.
So I move that we grant the continuance for 28 Wawatasi Road, map 6, parcel F1-12 until May 19th, 2021.
Second.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Did I miss you, Ernie? You're good? Okay, and
Yeah, you
myself,
got me.
Brad Chase.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks,
aye.
Brad.
Motion carries 5-0. So, all right. Next, we have a notice of intent for 14 Hardin Lane, map 76, parcel A3. It's a proposal for construction of an addition, a deck, installation of a temporary tight tank, future sewer line, and installation of a gas line with plantings. And I think we have Ms. Hamlin here tonight.
Good evening,
evening.
Lynn Hamlin, representing Michael Valandry. The project is pretty much as you read in the notice. The relevant resource areas here are land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, BVW, and riverfront. It's a bunch of little pieces, actually. None of them are a big project, but we put them all in one plan. The first part is the installation of a temporary tight tank. I'm sure the board knows that there's a sewer line going to be down Hardin Lane, and they put the pump station in at the base of the cul-de-sac, but they haven't tied it into the Chatham treatment plant yet, which they anticipate doing in August, I think, of this year. So the tight tank will enable the new owner to move in, and then once the sewer line is available for attachment, they will replace the treatment tank with the sewer connection in the same location. The other part of the project they'd like to do is construct an addition. I assume everybody was out there. If you were, the addition just squares off the back of the house. The addition is outside the buffer zone, outside the flood zone, and it is only located within the riverfront, the outer riparian of the riverfront, and it's located on the opposite side of the house than the other coastal resource areas. You would also like to put an elevated deck in the front of the house, which is over existing patio, a little stairway in the wall. Eventually, he'd like to put in a gas line as well. We just included that on the plan, so the whole comprehensive project is on one plan. I write pretty comprehensive narratives, so I'm not going to read it back to you. I'll just discuss the mitigation. When I was talking to Amy, I didn't realize that this project had been before the board for a violation. There's joint owners and the names are different, so I didn't know. So Amy was kind enough to meet us on site to talk about mitigation, so that mitigation for the tree cutting could be shown on the plan and it wouldn't overlay with mitigation for the construction. So it could be added to it versus overlaid on the property. So we did that. We talked about where it should go and what it should be. Amy had suggested 20 shrubs for the 6 cut trees. I took the liberty to substitute half of the trees or half of the shrubs for 3 trees instead of 20 shrubs. I did 10 shrubs and 3 trees, trying to add some diversity to the site. I put the mitigation plan right on Dan Speakman's site plan, again for ease. And then what we did, also discussed with Amy, is we amended the 2-to-1 straight mitigation a bit to account for portions of the project, which are the majority of the project is actually constructed over existing hardscape. And like for the addition is on the back end of the house, only within the outer riparian zone. All constructed over gravel or the driveway or access steps. And the front of the house is, again, constructed over existing patio. So what we agreed was reasonable, which I know you have your own ideas on these things, but we thought it was reasonable, was that for any portion of the construction occurring over ground, we would do 2-to-1 mitigation. In any part of the construction occurring over existing hardscape, we would do a 1-to-1 mitigation. So what that did was it gave a total square foot of required mitigation using that formula of 1,140 square feet. So that was added to the mitigation for the violation. And that's all shown on the plan. We're trying to fill in the bare areas along the coastal bank and then build up so that you have a wider productive buffer to protect the resource area from activity on the property. It's been a long night, so I'll just try to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Do you have summary comments for us, Amy?
Long night, Lynn. It's only 8 o'clock.
I know, I'm tired.
So,
They've been long lately.
yeah, so hopefully we'll look forward to the earlier one tonight. That being said, to remind the commission, some trees got removed last year or over the fall, in the fall, and some chips were spread as well as at the edge of a wetland area. At the time, the commission just required that the chips be removed, which they did, and that they file a planting plan in the spring. So when Lynn approached me and said, well, they're ready to do another part of the project, it just made sense to me to combine them, and just have one application for everything. So as Lynn stated, 6 trees had been removed that were within our jurisdiction. Typically, it's not a regulation anywhere, but typically, like when I do an administrative review, if somebody wants to take down a tree, I do require replanting with either a tree somewhere else on the property or with 3 shrubs to try to come up with some sort of biomass there. So 6 were removed, 3 are proposed to go back. The 6 that were removed, there was a couple down closer to the wetland, but the other ones were up closer to the house and definitely would have been approved to have been removed because they were hanging over the house. So 3 trees going back, 10 shrubs to reconcile the other 3-ish trees that came down. If you've been out to the site where the deck is proposed in the front of the house towards the water side, I considered deck and patio really to be almost one and the same, if one was going over the other. And on the back side of the house where the addition is proposed, it's on the outer edge, towards the outer riparian zone. And is my recommendation, but you can feel free and put your own sense in that due to its location, I didn't think 2-to-1 was required for all of that because of some existing disturbance already there. Right, it's right up against the house where there's walkways and everything else right now. So that being stated, I would, with the mitigation, both or for the replanting as well as the mitigation, I think it's a nice variety of plantings that you have proposed that will do well on the site and provide great species diversity and habitat. Let me go back to my summary here because I know I had one other comment.
While you're doing that, I just forgot to add that he wanted to take the greenbrier out of the trees. The existing native trees are being impacted by the greenbrier. And he also wanted to remove some invasive honeysuckle, but I wanted Amy to allow shrub. It's not a lot of them, but I wanted her to approve it shrub by shrub or allow me to do it so they don't, and nobody goes in there, especially if the homeowner's doing it and mistakes one invasive for another. So that I just put that in the my narrative, and I would encourage you to include that in an order.
Yep. They're fairly easy enough to be, you go out to the site or with the applicant or, flagging them would be appropriate. So yes, I met with, both sets of owners now, and they both seem to really want to do the right thing and rectify the situation as well as, be friendly to the environment. So the mitigation, I think, is in the appropriate location, closest to the wetland resource. I would suggest that the rest of the understory, kind of in that 50-foot buffer in particular, it's not going to be replanted. First of all, it's mostly treed. It's pretty shaded. That the understory is seeded with a native Cape Cod meadow mix, and that no fertilizers or chemicals, even organic, would be allowed to be used on the property within the 200-foot riverfront area, which is essentially the entire property. And that will help with health, maintain the health of the river. So with those conditions, I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Amy. All right, let's go through comments and questions from commissioners, starting with Ernie.
I have no comments. Thanks.
All right, Stan.
Nothing here.
John.
No comments.
Carolyn.
I'm looking at the mitigation plantings, and you've got 2 river birches. And then are you counting the witch hazel as the 3rd tree?
I am. The one I spec'd out is a pretty big plant. So it's categorized as a tree.
Okay.
Yeah, it is considered a small tree.
A small tree. That's interesting. My question.
Go ahead.
My question on the river birches is, are these people, I have not been to the site, I have to admit, but when I was looking at it at Google Maps, it was hard to determine what their view from this new deck will be. And my question is, if they come back, are they going to be coming back to us with vista pruning requests with the river birches?
I don't think so, because there's already tree cover there. Their view is more through the cul-de-sac and up the river from that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the view is pretty much, if they were to look straight down from the deck, it's a lot of phragmites, to be honest, and you can't really see through the marsh at that point. So Lynn's correct. You have to kind of look diagonal across the cul-de-sac to get a view of the water.
You can see that how the house has been oriented, I think, reflects the view too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I don't really have a comment on the project, but I want to take the time to ask a question on just any changes to this area since the restoration project at 28. Have the phragmites come on? Does anybody know, either yourself or the owners, have there been changes to that phragmites since that restoration project occurred?
I don't know what you're asking.
The Muddy Creek project, when the town work together to allow more flow. Open the bridge up essentially. So.
Yeah, it used to be a culvert, and they just opened it up to a wide open bridge. It greatly increased the tidal flushing in Muddy Creek. And so this doesn't pertain to the project. So, if you don't mind, if you know this, I'm just curious, have there been changes to the salt marsh of the Phragmites at the river border since that project went in?
Are you asking me?
Just curious if you or
I'm only out of context. I don't have any history with the site, so I've just only seen it in the last couple of months.
Yep, I'm just taking a shot because it's an interesting thing to ask. I see one of the owners is here. I'm not sure if they've been around long enough to know if that's the case.
Hi, we're here, and we just purchased the house from a family friend in the fall. So we didn't actually pass papers until after the new year. So we are not familiar with anything older than, August or September, I think, is when we first looked at the house.
And it hasn't been lived in for 18 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It had been.
Yeah, wow, I know. So I'm not sure if you'll get any information from maybe Bill.
Yeah, the Bill is the neighbor next door. He's been there for like 40 or 50 years. He'd be the one to ask.
Yeah, I think I know him. Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's really been an exciting restoration project, and it's going to be right in your backyard. So good luck. All right. Any?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Mark Burgess. Totally by coincidence, I did have a project on Muddy Creek about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Just after the tidal influence increased quite a bit. And I only last week asked my client, how are the Phragmites doing? Were they in a process of transition or not? I would say from what she told me that it's possible that the transition of the Phragmites, they should go away. And the intent was for new marsh to start propagating. She didn't really notice that much of a difference, no increase. So I'm saying we might possibly be at a turning point where the Phragmites could start to be going away, but nothing dramatic has happened out there yet.
All right, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. It's really curious because it was a fantastic restoration project, but Phragmites is so persistent, even with increasing salinity. So just something to keep an eye on, and hopefully you'll see more salt marsh over time.
Yep.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, any additional comments from members of the audience or the commissioners want to revisit any items? All right, we're moving through notice of intents quicker than ever tonight, which I guess is good.
Yeah, Brad?
Yes.
Yeah, Peter LaPointe. We live at, we have a place at 7 Hardin. I just wanted to say that the tidal flow has really increased since the culvert's been opened. I've seen high tides higher than we ever witnessed before in the 10 years we've been there. And definitely the coastline and also the whole flood of the basin is changing at that upper part of the Muddy Creek.
And is it positive in your eyes?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There have to be improvements to the aquatic resources there, fish and wildlife.
Yes, yeah, it's worth it. You should go visit the conservation land right next door. You can walk right out and see the whole end of the creek.
Well, that's great news. It was a fantastic project, and it often takes time to see what happens. So that's why I was asking the question. So thank you, Peter. Well, if there are no further comments, we can take a motion now from one of the commissioners.
I'll make a motion, we approve the notice of intent for 14 Hardin Lane, map 76, parcel A3.
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Carolyn. Any further comments under discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. By roll call, starting with Ernie.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 5-0. All right, thank you.
Thank you. The
Good night.
homeowners and I appreciate your time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to continue to work with you all. Thank you.
Amy, I
All right,
hope you're feeling better soon.
I'm actually doing great.
Hey, you made the call. That's awesome. All right, take care.
Good luck.
Thanks.
All right, that concludes the notice of intents. We had 7 tonight, and I guess we're kind of cheating to have 4 continuances, but we'll take it. Yep, we'll take it. Next, we have a show cause hearing, and this is for clear cutting of wetland vegetation at 0 Standish Woods Circle, map 116, parcel C5-65. And I think we began discussions last hearing on this. I'm not sure if we should open up with your thoughts, Amy, or if the applicants have any new information or the property owners have any new information.
I guess first I want to see, is there somebody here representing?
Yeah, I assume there was earlier. We had a lot of people earlier.
To a date certain. So I did talk with Melissa about this, who, had sat in on the meeting. I guess if somebody comes on, please just jump in here. But what I'll state is that, the association president was not aware of the activity that took place, which I do believe, and that they were not aware of that. And they said they've been asking, but nobody's stepping up to that. So ultimately what happens in that case is that it is on their land and they are liable to take care of things. So, this was a fairly egregious violation that happened out there. It's a very large area of BW that was decimated, and it can't just be left. So my recommendation is that you issue an enforcement order to the association to file an after the fact notice of intent for restoration within 60 days of tonight.
Okay.
And that restoration has to be done at, maybe not the notice of intent, but the plan itself at least needs to be done by a professional in the restoration world.
Okay. Any thoughts on a fine, Amy?
Because, upon speaking with the association president, who is, she's claimed to be quite elderly, has not walked down there, has only been the president for a year or so, has not actually walked down there. You really can't walk down there. I don't think it was the association as a whole that had anything going on in the back of this. I do think it was individual homeowners, but who may abut this, but we didn't see it being done. We can't prove anything, no matter who we think might have done it. So I'm not recommending any fines, but it's going to be a substantial restoration that they're going to have to do.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Amy. We'll go through comments just in case folks have anything new to say after the last hearing, and I'll switch things around. I'll start with Carolyn.
No, I don't have any comments.
All right, John.
Yeah, I don't have anything in addition to say. I support what Amy is recommending.
All right, Stan.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where we left that with them. I know that they said they've been trying to find out what they did or, who caused it and everything, but we were, I think, clear to them that somebody in the area probably did it, and I agree with Amy's comments, I guess, that
if they find out who did it, then they can charge.
Right.
That's a civil matter that they can take individually, but they can also pursue requiring them to pay for this restoration.
No, I think I agree with you, Amy, that we kind of left it hanging at the last meeting, and I think we need to have it clarified with them that something has to be done by the association.
Yeah, it is ultimately their responsibility, and it's a big one,
Okay, Ernie.
Yeah, Amy, I'm not sure I agree with you as far as the fine is concerned, given the fact that there was a second area that you mentioned to us that was at the end of one of the other cul-de-sacs that has also been cleared. So this is twice now. And replanting the most recent one that's been clear cut, I think is adequate penalty for that. But I do think a monetary fine is appropriate, just to let the association know that they need to watch this area. They just can't, remediate after the fact once somebody does this, but that there will be some financial ramifications to it, immediate financial ramifications. So I think a $300 fine would be appropriate for the 2 violations that we've identified have taken place over a number of years here.
Thanks, Ernie. One thought, Amy, do you have any ideas? Last time we did discuss the idea that this cutting probably benefited 1 or 2 homes. And any thoughts on that? And if people are just covering up because they don't want to, point fingers at neighbors, is that a possibility?
It certainly is, but I can't prove it. There's about 3 neighbors who would benefit from this potentially. We can't prove it.
Okay.
We would urge, people, if anybody's listening, that, if you know something, please tell us. We would never, divulge who said anything, but this really decimated entire portion of the shoreline.
Yeah. Well, I like Ernie's suggestion, and if the mitigation that is eventually constructed is really favorable, we can always rescind a fine. So
it's fine.
So I kind of favor having a fine and then keeping in mind that we're going to discuss, what the mitigation will be. So Ernie, maybe if you want to make a motion to that end.
Okay, I would move that we impose a $300 fine on, just looking quickly on the association for Zero Standish Woods Circle clear cutting that's occurred, as well as require the development and submission of a remediation plan within 60 days to repair this particular area's damage.
Okay, could I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye. Well, I guess I'll ask for discussion in case somebody feels strongly about the fine. Any thoughts or any comments from anybody?
I just want to clarify, I want to make sure the motion is clear that there's 2 areas that were cut, and the motion is to require remediation for both those areas.
That's the case, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we should, yes.
All right. Any additional discussion? All right, we've got a motion seconded, so we'll ask for roll call vote. All those in favor say aye, starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye. Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye, so the motion carries 5-0. All right. So next we have some extension requests. The first one is for 11 and 13 Bryan Way, map 104, parcels E2-1 and E2-2. It's to raise an existing dwelling and construct new dwelling with appurtenances. It was issued in May 17, 2018, and they're looking for a 3-year extension to this permit. Any thoughts on this one, Amy?
Yeah, I reviewed the file and just wanted to check and make sure that I thought this would get approved today. Getting some feedback from you, Ernie.
Looks like Ernie, yeah.
I got it. And then they submitted a letter stating their rationale for it. For this particular case, I know we're usually a little more hesitant to issue extensions, but in this case, with their rationale and what the project was, I would recommend approval of a one-time 3-year extension.
Okay, thanks. Any comments, folks, on that? I have no concerns with that. All right, hearing none, would someone like to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve a one-time 3-year extension for 11 and 13 Bryan Way.
Okay, could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye by roll call, starting with Carolyn.
May I ask one question though, Brad?
Sure, sorry.
I'd like to change the motion to approve the extension subject to the regulations and bylaws in effect at the time the constructions begins. I assume that would be the case, but one of the things that always concerns me with these 3-year extensions is that so many things change between now and then. And as we saw with Permaking, you know, that all of a sudden we're up against, or the property owners are up against a rock and a hard place because the conditions on the lot have not kept pace with the changes and regulations we have.
Let me just quickly look at the plan. I don't believe that there was anywhere that it didn't meet current regulations, but let me just look real quick. I did look at it briefly yesterday, but I've only been back for a day. It was rather rushed.
Is there any downside to including Ernie's language? Is that okay?
My only hesitation is you can't, I mean, we're not like rehashing any of the hearing. We can't put any additional conditions on this because it's not a hearing.
That's part of the problem with putting 3 years on these extensions.
Right. Just give me a second here. I got to review something real quick. I said I did look, but I really kind of breezed through things. So I had some idea of what was happening tonight. Hang on. Just taking a second. All right, here we go. Yeah, I don't think that that's going to be an issue because we have mitigation required. We have the no chemical application. I think all of our current regulations are going to be covered within this anyways. So I don't anticipate any issues with that.
All right, so can we have an amended motion to include Ernie's language? I guess, Ernie, you amended your own, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I guess I did
okay.
too.
So we just need that to be seconded, that's all.
Is that legal, Amy, for us to, even though it doesn't apply here, to put new conditions on an extension?
Oh, you're muted, Amy.
I think without an applicant here, it's questionable. So that's why I quickly looked to make sure that I don't think any other, things that we've changed is, but I would hesitate to do that until we have, I can ask my counterparts in other towns. But yeah, I would, I know what the intent is there, but without having them here, I wouldn't. But I don't think that this one is going to have, this one in particular is not going to have that issue.
It's not waterfront, it's not riverfront, it's floodplain or something more benign than that.
It is BBW, but they are doing the required mitigation for it, and they have the no chemicals, which that's our main changes.
This is an issue that might be worthwhile looking into, but I don't think then this is the appropriate one to add that language.
Okay, I don't think there's any, reason to disagree with you at this point. I mean, it could come up in the future. We want to scrutinize a request a little bit deeper for this reason. So I guess we'll just keep it in mind. All right, so let's see. So I guess why don't you go back and make your motion, Ernie, with just agreeing to extension.
Okay, so I move we approve the extension request for 11 and 13 Bryan Way, map 101, 104, to raise an existing dwelling, construct a new dwelling with a 3-year extension.
Okay. You have a second, please?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye. Roll call starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Stan?
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we have an extension request for 3 Holtz Point Road, map 6, parcel A2-4. It's a dwelling, deck, addition, vegetation planting. This was issued April 21st, 2016. It was extended already for 2 years in 2019 to allow for mitigation plans to establish. Now they're looking for a 1-year extension. What are your thoughts, Amy?
First, is there anybody here to represent that? I do see somebody on the line, but I don't know if it's for this one. Okay. I did send an email off yesterday asking why they want another, I mean, I know it's a 1-year extension, but why? Because the last time we issued an extension for 2 years was to help establish the native plantings. And the reason now is to help establish the native plantings. There's not a huge rush to this because so long as the state of emergency, I'm thinking we should put this on the next agenda so we have a chance to get an answer. You know, is it really the health of the plantings? Is there other things that they might want to do and come back and amend for? I don't know. Because of the state of emergency with COVID, all permits that are active remain active at this time, so they're at no threat of expiring. Plus, they put the request in for an extension prior to their expiration date. So I'd recommend we put it on the next meeting to get a little more clarity here.
Okay. Do we need to have a motion to continue?
No, you don't. Not for this.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I have a question.
Yes, sure.
Where were these plantings happening? I went by there today and walked on the beach in front, looked around. It didn't look like there was anything happening there.
A lot of it was replacement of the plants that were on the coastal bank, and some of them were done a number of years ago. Again,
so there was a big strand of whatever that black landscaping fabric that gets used for work limit.
Okay.
Just spread out down the beach, like at the property lines. It wasn't even clear which property. And I didn't go on the property to look closely at what was happening there, but didn't look to me like there was any new planting or anything as far as I could see. So
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we need some clarity. I haven't had a chance to go out there and see what's going on. So.
Okay.
All right. I think it's a good thing to do, to ask the questions why they want to do this. All right, next we have an extension request for the town of Harwich at multiple locations for dredging and disposal along Nantucket Sound, Herring River, Round Cove, Allen Harbor, Witchmere Harbor, and Saquatucket Harbor. The permit was issued September 22nd, 2017, and the extension request is for 3 years. Any summary thoughts, Amy?
Sure, because this one expired, but didn't really expire because of COVID. It is still active, and we kind of caught this one and the next one. And they really should ask for actually an extension permit for it and not just rely on the COVID. So this is the dredging of the channels of the harbors and using sand if it is appropriate to be used. We have a lot of testing we have to do on all the dredge material. So if it is less than 10% fines and not contaminated, we can put it on our town beaches. And we have to abide by the same rules everybody does in regards to beach nourishment and raking and plovers and everything like that. So this would simply allow the town to continue to keep their channels open and provide the beaches with some sand. So I would recommend approval of a 3-year extension for that.
Thanks, Amy. I'll ask up front, had there been any reports filed, summary reports? Do we require reporting?
We did not require reporting.
Okay.
Well, I mean, whenever John dredges, he gives me, I mean, in terms of, we get post-dredge surveys. I'm sorry, we didn't have Adam here. We do have, the post-dredge surveys. So if, in terms of that, if that's what you're looking for, I can make sure we get that. I get that to you.
Are they in the form of as-built or just like narratives?
They're usually quadrant, they're plans with elevations and things like that. I mean, they don't do a survey for like shellfish or anything like that. It's really just depth for the most part. And whether or not, I believe, John can correct me, but what the composition really is.
Yeah, it's obviously something that's easily to support. I'm just not sure if there's any resource information or just documentation of what happens to be worth looking over.
I can ask.
Yeah, anyone feel, I guess I'll run through comments. It's kind of a big deal. Carolyn, any thoughts on this?
No, I have no thoughts.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I have a question about the language here, which seems a little ambiguous in one particular way. That is, it says dredging and disposal along Nantucket Sound, Herring River, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like the dredging applies to along Nantucket Sound. I don't think that's what is intended, but that's what I thought when I first read it. Is there a way to state it a little more clearly? They're not dredging in front of beaches
Right.
in Nantucket Sound, right?
Correct. We had to, that's what the original application, that's the wording the original application was for, even though it wasn't, it was very broad. So when they asked for an extension, they asked for an extension for that. But for the record, this is the dredging of the channels of our harbors only and placement of sand on the beaches.
Okay, all right.
Stan.
Yeah, the screen froze up when you were talking there, Amy, in the beginning. So I think I caught the gist of it at the end. It's really the way it's going back to John's point, it's dredging of those things underneath, Brown Cove, Allen Harbor, Witchmere, Sackatucket, and Herring River, right? That's what they're potentially dredging, and then using the disposal on the sound beaches.
Correct. We had to advertise it as it was originally advertised, but no, we are not dredging in Nantucket Sound.
And what's the Sackatucket Landside Redevelopment Project?
That's the next one.
Oh, I thought we were talking about both of them.
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, I have no further questions then.
All right, Ernie.
No, I have no comments, thanks.
Okay. I guess I've got a process comment or question for you, Amy, is, so this was originally a notice of intent. Can it be extended, forevermore? Because this work will need to be done forevermore. How does it go to is there at some point where they have to come back with a new notice of intent?
I have to look at our regulations if we cap the number of extensions. I know we talked about that. I don't remember if we ever decided that. Some towns do that you cap, they can have no more than 1 3-year extension or something like that. I don't think we do that yet. That being said, I don't think our regulations have changed for for this type of activity yet. So if you have a major bylaw change that would impact a project like this, then you can, you don't have to grant an extension.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if there's any reason to have a new notice of intent for this type of work. All I would ask for is to have, I think, a little more documentation of what's done year to year. Are there ever, any encounters with resources that can be avoided? I keep an eye on the nourishment down Red River Beach, and it is interesting to see what's in the piles. You will see some shellfish, you'll see some critters now and then, but my guess is it's a pretty uncommon encounter. But some documentation, that's all I'd look for. Okay, well, if there's no further comments, I'll make a motion that we approve the extension for the town of Harwich, multiple locations for dredging and disposal.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye, starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Stan. Ernie.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we've got an extension request for the town of Harwich, 715 and 731 Route 28, map 15, parcel T3-0 and H4-0. It's the Saquatucket Harbor redevelopment project. Permit was issued July 19, 2017, and the extension request is for 3 years.
So this is the redevelopment of, the new Harbor Masters building, the snack shack, all the boardwalks, all of that, the parking, the drainage, the new septic, Harbor Masters building that's right on, workshop that's right on 28, the new parking lot. So that is all this project. And the project is done with the exception the plantings need to be finished. They've done some of the shrub plantings, but have to do the tree plantings. They've been working with me and DPW to try to not only find trees that would be appropriate here in a very baking, windy, sunny site, even though we have irrigation, but also find ones that are available because evidently there's a tree shortage. So they're in the process. They purchased some. They're going to be planting them this spring and doing hopefully some more this fall. We do have the condition that the plants have to survive for a while before we issue a cert. So they're asking for a 3-year extension so that they can do that. But just know that they've already started. They had started some of the planting. They're continuing the planting this spring, and they're doing some more this fall.
All right, thanks, Amy. Any questions? Start with Carolyn.
I don't have any questions. I just want to compliment Amy again on that gorgeous project.
All right, John.
No questions.
Stan.
No questions.
Ernie.
I'm good.
And I'll be the bad guy and ask the question about the lawn. Seems very green in the summertime. We must have put in a no fertilizer on that. Do you know the status there?
I don't. I keep an eye on what's, some of the area is outside the 100-foot buffer. It is still in floodplain. I'd have to go back, and I can do that right now, actually, and see.
Amy, actually, the lawn is that I noticed is just next to the snack shack. It's right at the end of the, as I recall, right at the end of the ramp.
No, there is some there too. Sorry, I was thinking more along the sides of the roads, but there is some there too.
Yeah, right next to the Andrews Creek. It goes underground there. It was a little bit of a discussion point. Some of us were seeking a larger buffer from along the property, and we didn't prevail. So, we probably should stick with our own rules if in fact it is a no fertilizer.
I assume they took out the irrigation they had put in, the underground irrigation, right?
They took out what was not permitted. Forgive me, I forget exactly where. They didn't put any by the road. Let's see.
There was all It was all along the road.
Some of the road is outside the 100-foot. So irrigation is permitted in the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone up by the harbor master's office and snack shack. Only temporary above ground drip irrigation is allowed in the 0 to 50. So they are allowed to irrigate up by the harbor master's office and snack shack, but no fertilizers are to be used in the buffer zone.
So is that permitted irrigation by the snack shack?
That's in the 50 to 100, yes.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, yeah, if you don't mind asking, it's, it's worth, if we can reduce any fertilizer going into Saquoteca Harbor, that's a good thing. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and move that we grant the permit extension for 3 years for Town of Harwich 715 and 731, Route 28, map 15, parcel T3-0 and H4-0. Have a second, please.
Second.
All right, second by Ernie. All those in favor, say aye. Starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we have one cert. It's for 7 Herring Run Road, map 36, parcel L12, construction of a swimming pool and fence. The work, I guess, never started, Amy.
This is easy. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
So cert of compliance for work not done.
Okay. All right, does someone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the request for a certificate of compliance for work not done at 7 Herring.
Second.
Parcel L.
Okay, second. All those in favor say aye, starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 5-0. So we're now under any new business, and I guess we have a request for memorial service. What's the scoop on that, Amy?
Well, we have care and custody of this beautiful little 2 acres of land that's right on Nantucket Sound on Walder Road. And it's a field, essentially, with a beach. There's a fence, across so people can't park there. So the stipulation in the deed is that it is not to be, sold. It has to be conservation. It's to be mown. The previous owner wanted it to continue to be mown. And that, parking can't take place on it. For a long time, it was used, that was not really known, and neighbors would use that for parking when they had parties at their homes. And but we did discover that is strictly prohibited. So they'd like to have a little ceremony, just one day, at the property, and we already told them parking would not be allowed on the property. But it's similar, to other events that people want to have on town lands. They do need a okay from us. So I would just recommend, I'm going to recommend approval. It's one day. They put up the chairs and take down the chairs in one day, pick up from trash, etc.
Yeah, so can one car park there or no parking at all?
No.
Okay. I know the spot, it's really beautiful. And I've always wondered, can you bring a bicycle there and, walk in? I think. Yeah,
you can park your bicycle there and walk in. The road's so narrow that you can't even really park on the side of the road because there's boulders and then, a chain with a fence chain. But nope, that is town property. So, I mean, really, it's a lot of the people who live on that street. It's their kind of de facto, their beach area. But yeah.
We should sometime have a Conservation Commission picnic there. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be.
Once we get past all this stuff.
The conservation vehicle go on it. I could bring. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Anybody have any comments on this one? It seems pretty supportable.
I do. I'm totally against it. I don't think we should be having private ceremonies, be it weddings, be it on such a small piece of public land in the middle of the summer. That is a beach that everybody in that neighborhood, and actually Spinnaker area behind Walters Road, they have a pathway that goes through, and they use that beach. I don't think we should allow a memorial service. I think, this is a guess, but I do believe that the person who the memorial service is for used to live across the street from this plot. So I think that's why the family is requesting it. As much as I'd like to support it, it's a nice thought. I don't think it should be done in the middle of the summer.
All right, well, let's go through comments. John?
Well, I fully support this. I don't agree with Carolyn at all. I think I think it's a good idea. I see no reason why people in the middle of the summer, I guess Carolyn is concerned that some people will feel their access to the beach would be interfered with, but you just have to walk around the corner down the end of, is it Neal Road there? To get down to the beach. If you want to get to the beach, you don't have to go through that lot to get to the beach. I don't think it's a big deal. I support this.
All right, Stan.
I guess my question would, we allow this on any of our lands?
I mean, town in general allows ceremonies and things to happen on town properties with either whoever, conservation, if it's ours, or selectmen. I mean, for conservation, we allow, boating or fishing derbies on the West Reservoir, or we allow tournaments on Long Pond for sculling.
So you've answered my question. I mean, this is really, forget the specific piece of property. It'd be a common occurrence on town, well, not a common occurrence, it would be allowed on town land.
Yeah, and I do feel, and Carolyn, I respect your opinion completely. People in this area have been using it as a private property, almost essentially a private beach area, and it is public. So, provided they can meet the criteria set forth in the deed with the no parking, one day picking up, I think it's in line with other times we've allowed things. So
that's all I got.
I understand everybody's point of view.
Yeah, Ernie?
And to Carolyn's point, by approving this, we're not restricting people's access to this property either. I mean, if they want to trip over the chairs and go to the beach, they can do that. Is that right?
Correct. I have to look at the letter. I don't think it's very big. It's a small number.
Yeah. So
I believe it's a small number of people, and it's a 2-acre property. It's almost 2 acres big.
Yeah. So I would just, in our approval letter, just say that people will continue to have the right to access the land during the memorial service, or other people, or something like that.
I can absolutely put that in the letter that it's not for a private event. This is not a private property for that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm good.
Amy, is there any time of day request or duration request? It seems to me it shouldn't be that long in duration.
I don't know off the top of my head. I was just going to say the chairs have to be put up and taken down in the same day, Or it's a daytime.
And it's up on the lawn or down the beach?
I believe it's up in the lawn.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm sure people might go down to the beach too, but I think the ceremony is going to be up in the lawn because I think they had a couple of people with mobility issues who might not be able to get down to the beach, from what I understand.
The letter says they would be using the property for 2 to 4 hours and that there would be 25 to 40 people.
Okay.
Yep, so I'm in favor of seeing how it goes. If it's 60 people for 6 hours, that's that's pushing it, I think.
I mean,
But
2 years ago, we had the request, I don't even think you knew this because it didn't even get to you. You know, somebody wanted to have a wedding ceremony there in the middle of summer, tents, cars, everything. And I said, no, it doesn't fit with the way we acquired the property. It just couldn't happen.
That was my question. Would we allow a wedding there under these same circumstances?
I mean, it would be a case by case basis. Is it just a ceremony?
A birthday party?
People probably have birthday parties there anyway.
Yeah.
They don't even bother to ask. Some 10-year-old kid who wants to have a birthday party there, why would anyone even ask?
I mean, they can appeal with a reason to us, and I think, you know, a person that passed from the neighborhood, I think I'm okay with that.
She hasn't lived there for years.
Yeah. Well,
Her home, and if she's the lady I'm thinking of, and I met her through golf, it was her family home. She started going. She died in her late years, and her family owned that home across the street, and she started going when she was 6 weeks old.
Wow. Yeah. Well, well, let's have a vote. I don't mind it. I think, you know, short duration, not a huge crowd, but I think the letter asked for what was that, 25 to 40?
25 to 40, and they'd use it for 2 to 4 hours.
Okay, I would say, you know, maybe max it at 4 hours.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the request to hold memorial services at 23 Walter Road, meeting the letter request of a maximum of 4 hours and 40 people. Could we have a second, please?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
I think I am just going to be very clear in the letter, say no tents, no, because if it's 2 to 4 hours, I mean, I don't know if they're planning on providing any sort of food. I mean, they can't park there, but, you know,
yeah,
not bringing in grills here. We're not having tents, things like that, you know?
Leave the place as you found it, and we'll see how it goes. And Carol, if there's a problem, I think we'll learn a lot from this.
Absolutely.
So, all right, all those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay, starting with Carolyn.
Nay.
Okay, John?
Aye.
Stan?
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye, so the motion carries 4-1. All right, any new business?
I have two announcements, I guess. Sorry, my brain's still a little foggy. One, unfortunately, our plover monitor had to resign for private medical reasons. And it was unforeseen, to be honest. I mean, they were not well, but they had to go up to the Boston to get the root cause of things. So we do still have the applications for the other people. I'm going to be vetting them ASAP, starting tomorrow. I just wanted to get through the meeting tonight. But I am hoping that, you know, people who've been helping can continue to help. Right now we have birds we have 3 pairs between Bank Street and Winchmere, and we have 1 pair plus an extra male at Red River. We would anticipate another pair or 2 at Red River. The hard work, you know, the mornings of trekking the beaches really doesn't start until we have babies, and we don't even have a nest yet. So my hope is by the time, you know, in a month from now, when we might have babies, that we have a new person in place. But I could really, I mean, I have Melissa now, but we can't cover it, especially me with not being able to like pound steaks at the moment. So you've all been, you know, people have been wonderful, and I just ask that if you can continue, just. And then I hate to ask you another thing. If any of you are already doing it and wouldn't mind helping at the Tour de Trash event, which is this Saturday. We're modifying the event. It's a community cleanup. People are going to essentially drive into the community center and pick up materials from their car and go out to selected sites. If you haven't signed up and want to, go on the Harwich Conservation Trust website. But we have a few volunteers with just traffic flow and handing out materials that can't make it. So from like 9:30 to 10:30 really is when we would probably need an extra set of hands or two if anybody can do it on Saturday. If you can't, I understand. So.
All right, thanks for coordinating that, Amy. So you can pick a location on the website?
For the pickup, yes, on the Harwich Conservation Trust website.
You want someone to?
Oh, sorry, Ernie. I muted you by accident. Sorry, Ernie. Go ahead. I got you. Oh no, I guess I didn't. Oh no.
There we go. I think that worked. So are you asking for someone to be at the town hall or the community center, 9:30 to 10:30?
Community center.
Community center. Okay, I'll be there for that.
Thank you so much. It's just, yeah, it's been challenging. So we already have everybody, we'll have your role ready for you of what you're going to be doing and all that for that hour. Brad, yes, you can sign up on the HCT website. A lot of the routes are already taken. We capped the event at 100. We had about 80 last time I checked, which is really good considering what we're, it's still in the middle of here, but people aren't going to be mingling with each other. You're going to stay in your cars, pick up your stuff, go to your assigned, your site that you register for, pick up trash, then bring it back and dump it at our dumpster. But there's not going to be any large grouping happening. Mm-hmm. So we're going to pull it off. We're also giving away seeds because it's Earth Week. So we got a bunch of garden centers to donate, make small donations, and we're giving away wildflowers.
Yep. Thanks for coordinating all that, Amy. I've got one quick item that we voted on last time in terms of closing the gates at the Bell's Neck, conservation area. And I talked to Heinz Proft about that, and he was just concerned that it would be difficult to get a schedule together for this month to make it happen. And so I know you were out, Amy, and so you weren't able to help with that coordination. I was kind of relying on Ron, former commission member who lives right there. And he got back to Heinz and said that he really doesn't want to get involved with it. He's 86 at this point. Whereas a couple of years ago, he said he was in, and I think he's reconsidered. So I just want to tell folks that it may be too much to coordinate for this season. Although if we have a problem there, I think I'd like to react. So I don't know how people feel about that. We did, in fact, vote to close it, from, I think 8 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. And so I don't know if you got any feedback from people on that, Amy.
No, I didn't, but I could, broach the subject again with the police department since they're out patrolling anyways to see if I can talk to them.
Maybe bounce it off them because one thing that's coming up is that I'm working with Heinz on the concept of having a river herring harvest again. And, it seems likely that in, 1 or 2 years that'll happen. And when that happens, you'll have to have nighttime closures. It happened for decades, and we've kind of been away from it for really not that long. But I think that we'll have to come back to that concept at some point. So, but does anyone feel strongly about the fact that we discussed it, we voted on it, and it may not happen this year? Any concerns there?
Like I said, let us know if you see any abuse going on in there, Brad. If you do, then I think we need to figure out a better solution then.
Yeah, right. And I'm going to definitely ask police to keep me better informed because sometimes I get the information that stuff's happening there, and other times I don't.
Right.
And, you know, it's same thing with the environmental police. Sometimes, you know, you catch poachers at night, but we don't, and they may have go to court, but you don't know about it till they've been excused already at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's hard. I asked for that information and I'm told if it's an ongoing case, they don't want to tell it to me. And it's too bad because, you know, we need that information. And there have been some pretty coordinated eel poaching that has occurred there. It's certainly a couple of years ago. And we just don't want to allow people to do that if we can stop it with a gate closure. So I guess we'll just, you know, if you could inquire, Amy, and just let them know we have this interest and it just may not come together for this season. And, you know, if it's going to happen, we have to coordinate with Hines, with the police, and just find a way to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to let you folks know about that. Anything else?
No, but John, if you could stay on for 2 minutes after the meeting, after I stop recording, I just want to talk about the meeting tomorrow night for CPC real briefly. Okay. I just want to make sure you have everything that I sent, that's all. So our projects, community preservation projects, are on the docket for community CPC discussion tomorrow night for an update. That's the Hinckley Pond, like the park area. You haven't seen the project yet because we have to get engineering for it. So it has to get approved by conservation. And then the east end of Red River for new engineering and trying to proceed with trying to find a solution for there. And then the update on the 20 grand that CPC gave us last year for some property management items, which we're actively purchasing and making. So if you're interested, tune into CPC tomorrow night.
Okay. Well, awful glad to have you back, Amy. Glad you're doing well. And we're going to need you for the next couple of hearings, I think, that's for sure. All right. If there's no more new business, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, second by John. All those in favor say aye, starting with Carolyn.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. All right. Thank you all very much. And
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
all right, good night.
Aye.